Hey everyone, Carl here with Literate Lessons, and today we are talking about the Paradox Pokemon. We are going to be looking at Series 2 rules. I know that it is still really early. Unfortunately, Series 1 was only ever slated to last a couple months, but we kind of expected this as most of the time Series 1 formats don't ever really get a chance to shine in competitive. But I'm excited to talk about Series 2. We're going to make the best of a bad situation, and let's just get right into this. I plan on going a little bit more in depth on all of these, or at least most of them, before Series 2 actually starts in their own separate little videos. Be on the lookout for that. So today we're going to kind of just highlight what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and kind of look and see what they could potentially do for the format since we aren't really playing Series 2 yet. I know Showdown has the rules set up, but we're not really quite into the thick of Series 2 yet. We still have Liverpool to get through, and we still have Series 1 to play. However, starting with Iron Bundle here, the Delibird copy, there's going to be an immediate impact felt by this thing, right? Base 136 speed is very, very high. I believe you get to 206 with max speed, Timid Nature, and then if Quark Drive activates, that raises it by 1.5. So this puts you at like 309. Which is nuts, right? That puts you in like Tailwind territory for most Pokemon. Like, and you don't even have to the only thing you have to do is just hold the booster energy. And that activates on send out, and you're at 309. There's nothing that's really gonna outspeed you immediately. Beyond that, it's got a very good special attack, decent defense. Its bulk, though, is only the defense is the only good bulk stat it has. This thing does not take a hit very well. We'll talk about Flutter Mane. It does the same very similar thing where it's fast, but it hits hard, but it can't take a physical hit. Iron Bundle can't really take a hit at all because of the way it's set up. Also, its move pool is kind of lacking. You do have some cool physical moves, but you really want to be playing like Icy Wind, Freeze Dry, Blizzard. Unfortunately, your best water move since they got rid of Scald is Hydro Pump, which makes you very inaccurate because there's not that many great special water moves in the game anymore. So that's why we see a lot of these physical water types, or Pokemon are just running Hydro Pump and just hoping they hit. But outside of that, you do have things like Chilling Water for good support. You have Encore. You do have Flip Turn if you want to play that kind of pivoty one. There's Helping Hand, Ice Spinner. There's a lot of good utility things that Iron Bundle can do. And I think its main job will be like a booster energy, Icy Wind, Freeze Dry, maybe Chilling Water kind of thing. I have heard scary things about where people are playing this thing as like an offensive sweeper, and it just OHKOs things, so definitely be on the lookout for that. But overall, I think the accuracy problems for Iron Bundle are going to be a little bit too much for most people to handle. And I don't see this thing seeing super high usage, but it'll still get played a lot. Moving on down the line through Violet ones, we have Iron Hands. This is a take on Hariyama. Has a lot of what Hariyama does, plus some extra stuff like Play Rough, some very good special electric attacks and Thunder and Thunderbolt. I believe you also have knockoff. You have Fake Out still. You don't have knockoff still, but you have Fake Out. And then the elemental punches, obviously, Heavy Slam, Earthquake, Bulldoze, stuff like that. Stat-wise, this thing is very, very bulky. If you ever play with Hariyama, you understand that its best stats are HP, attack, and defense. Iron Hands kind of copies that with HP at base 154, which is very, very good. Base 140 attack, which almost means you don't have to invest in it to do significant damage. And then base 108 defense, and then their special attack, special defense, and speed are all very below average. This thing does not like getting hit on the special side. That's why you see this thing will probably carry Assault Vest a lot, just to kind of help that low special defense be a meaningful stat, especially with this high HP. For moves, things like Fake Out's really, really good. I'm sure it'll carry Close Combat. I'm sure it'll carry Thunder Punch or a Wild Charge. You have access to Rock Slide, which is really good as well. Notably, you don't really have a flying weakness anymore, so you're not terribly worried about like acrobatics or brave bird or things like that. But it still would be a nice thing to have if your opponent is looking at kind of leveraging those neutral hits against you. Um, Play Rough is an interesting one. This is something that Hariyama doesn't get access to, I believe, and it could be very, very good. It could make or break the choice between using Iron Hands or Hariyama. But I think that Iron Hands is kind of going to be like Bundle. It's going to be hard to activate Quark Drive a lot of the time, so it's a little bit less used than, say, Flutter Mane or Roaring Moon, or maybe even Brute Bonnet. But I think that there's probably a case for at least Iron Bundle and Iron Hands to see significant amounts of play. Now we're kind of getting into the almost unplayable or not really needed territory. Iron Jugulis, aka Robo Hydreigon here, is a dark flying type with really good stats actually across the board. Base 94 HP is nothing to scoff at with 86 defense and 80 special defense. Where your shine is your base 108 speed. You are faster than Hydreigon is. You're faster than Garchomp even. And base 122 special attack is nothing to scoff at still. This thing gets a lot of the same stuff that I believe Hydreigon does, plus some. Mainly there's things like knockoff on the physical side. You also have access to Dark Pulse, Dragon Pulse, stuff like that. Being that Dark Flying type, you kind of fill a different role. Dark Flying is a very decent typing, I think, compared to Dark Dragon. No real big 4x weaknesses. You remove your fighting type weakness since you are a flying type. And so it'll be interesting to see if Iron Jugulis ever kind of gets into this own niche where it actually does stuff. Notably, this is a Tailwind setter, which is really, really cool. But I don't believe you really will be playing this as a Tailwind setter just because of the fact that it has so much like extra special attack that you want to be able to hit things with that. Notable coverage that Hydreigon doesn't get over this, Charge Beam, is very, very cool. While being low powered, this has a very high chance to raise your special attack and can kind of let you try to snowball the game a little bit. You could also activate your own terrain with electric terrain if that's something you're interested in. You have access to very fast Snarl on this. And so you could see Assault Vest sets kind of like Hydreigon. You could see Tailwind sets like we see with Hydreigon now. But I think it'll take some time to really kind of figure out what Iron Jugulis can do for the metagame. One of my favorite Paradox Pokemon is Iron Moth here. Fire Poison is such a cool typing, and I'm sad that this doesn't get Sludge Bomb. Because if this got Sludge Bomb, it would answer every fairy type in the game. Being a Fire Poison type, you resist fairy very well. You are very scared of ground, but you can always tear away from that. It's super easy to do, or you just play Air Balloon and make them attack you anyway. You have very good special attack, very good special defense, decent HP, very good speed. It's like they've designed these Paradox Pokemon with, they know like what they want them to do stat wise, and they put the stats where it matters, which is a good thing. A lot of the times Pokemon don't have that option. As for coverage, it is a very deep move pool. Bug Buzz, Dazzling Gleam, Discharge, Energy Ball, Fire coverage, and like Fire Blast, Flamethrower, Heat Wave, Overheat. You have access to Morning Sun, Hurricane, Psychic. Unfortunately, your only real good poison move is Sludge Wave, but outside of that, it's fine. Looking into some of the not so much used stuff, there's things like Sunny Day, Struggle Bug, Pounce, if that's something you're interested in. I believe this thing has Whirlwind, yep. You have U-Turn. So you have a decent physical like support move pool too. You have Acrobatics if that's something you're interested in. But overall, I think I see this thing just being like a Life Orb or a Booster Energy special attacker. You could also probably play Choice Specs on this and really deal some massive damage with that base 140 special attack. But overall, well, not having Sludge Bomb is a big deal. That forces you to kind of be like Terra Poison with Terra Blast, so you could have that single target poison type attack. So overall, I think this is just a little too much for Iron Moth to kind of get over the hump on. I think it'll be a fine Pokemon if you really need that big fairy resist, but I think it's 4 times weakness to ground, and having to force yourself into Terra Poison for single target poison damage is a little too much. Next on my list, Iron Thorns, the Tyranitar robot. Rock Electric is a really cool typing. We saw this with the Alolan Golem. You do get like the Sandstorm bonus, so since you are a rock type, you can just like use Sandstorm and set your own sand, and then you have the special defense boost. The problem is I don't think you do enough as a rock electric type to actually warrant playing this thing. Overall, your stats are decent. Base 100 HP, base 134 attack, base 110 defense, base 70 special attack, base 84 special defense, base 72 speed. None of that's bad by any means. Rock electric just is not a good typing like defensively. Rock is weak to water, you're weak to ground, you're weak to fighting, you're weak to steel. There's a lot that can just hit you for super effective damage unnecessarily, and then electric doesn't add any extra resistances really. It just makes it so you can hit water types for stab. And you kind of just lose to everything else, unfortunately. Coverage move-wise, this thing gets everything that Tyranitar does and more. I feel like you have Power Gem, you have Thunderbolt, you have Flamethrower. I think you have Ice Beam too. Yeah, you have all the special coverage that you could ever want. Dragon Tail, Dragon Claw, Blizzard, Brick Break, Bulldoze. I've seen that you can get Body Press with this set, and you can kind of do some kind of bulky body press things if you kind of get that idea in your head. Another big thing is this thing gets Snarl. Your special attack is not very good, but what you will probably see people do with this, if it does get played, is these special attacking sets, and probably would be using things like Assault Vest or other bulky items to kind of just be on the field for a long time. Another not so good typing, Ground and Steel. Iron Treads here. It's got decent stats, and it's absurdly fast. Base 106 speed for a Donphan robot, on top of your good attack and your great defense and your decent HP and special defense stat, means that you're fairly fast and you can hit pretty hard. This has a lot of extra things. Ice Fang, Ice Spinner's really cool coverage. Knockoff is very good. Your base 106 knockoff is very fast. You have Stab Iron Head, you have Stab Earthquake. I believe you get access to Iron Defense, so you can do Iron Defense body press things if you want to. Electro Ball is very interesting as like a coverage type move. Since you are base 106 speed, you could be hitting a lot of the slower water types for very impactful damage. Think like Dondozo, or maybe another water type that comes out of the woodwork here. But overall, I feel like this thing struggles to have a niche, and there's other Pokemon that do its jobs better. That base 120 defense stat I don't think is enough to warrant playing it when you could just play Iron Hands and have that base 108 and be a little bit more utility based than Iron Treads is. Working through the last of the Violet Paradox Pokemon, we have Iron Valiant. What is different about Iron Valiant than the rest of those Pokemon is this has base 590 stats versus base 570. This is also one of the only types to not really worry about having an electric or a steel type attached to it. It's very fighting, which is very interesting. It's kind of like a Gallade Gardevoir mashup, and you can see that in its base stats here of base attack is 130, base special attack is 120, and then base speed is 116. This thing is going to hit like a truck no matter what you do, and you kind of get to pick which way you want to lean into it. Because your coverage is deep and wide. There is so much you get because you're essentially a Gardevoir and a Gallade smashed together. You get access to very good physical moves in the ways of like fighting coverage, Brick Break, Close Combat, Drain Punch. You get access to all the elemental punches, Thunder Punch, Fire Punch, Ice Punch. You have access to Knockoff, Liquidation, Poison Jab, Psycho Cut, Shadow Claw, Shadow Sneak. Spirit Break, which is a move that was only really locked to Grimmsnarl, is now accessible to Iron Valiant. This thing can just be a assault vest on wheels and just I'm going to hit you with Spirit Break. You're not going to deal damage to me anymore. Not to mention, Fairy Fighting is actually a very decent typing defensive-wise, because Fighting is only weak to Psychic, and you're only really weak to, like, Flying, and those two types aren't very good in the format. So you're really only having to dodge whatever Fairy's weak to. But Fighting, I think, if I remember right, removes that Steel weakness from Fairy, so you're only really worried about Poison, which is not a very common type. And so this thing will be hard to take down, but because of its more frail-ish stature, I think it'll be easy to OHKO with more neutral hits. But overall, I think Iron Valiant will be a cool setup Pokemon. I didn't even talk about the special side. There's so much over here. Thunderbolt, Shadow Ball, Psychic, Moonblast, Icy Wind. You have fast Icy Wind too. This thing is amazing, but I don't know if it's good enough because you can't activate Quark Drive effectively. A lot of these Violet Pokemon do not have their ability essentially without carrying around a booster energy. Whereas the Scarlet Paradox Pokemon can very easily set up photosynthesis. The reason immediately all of these Pokemon are more playable than the Violet ones is because you can just slap Torkoal on your team and it just goes to town. You can slap on a manual Sunny Day setter and it still works. And so starting with Brute Bonnet here, Grass Dark is not the best typing. Grass plus anything is usually very bad defensively because Grass has so many weaknesses. Grass Dark doesn't do a whole lot better for it, but a lot of what Brute Bonnet's here to do is to kind of just sit in front of stuff because it's Amoonguss, and you kind of just eat hits. The only difference is now Amoonguss has base 127 attack. Now it'll hit you, and it'll hit hard. Looking at coverage moves here, we have Close Combat, Crunch. We actually have Earth Power, which is very interesting. We have Pollen Puff and Rage Powder, all the normal Amoonguss stuff. But on top of that, you have Stab, Sucker Punch. You have Taunt. You have Trailblaze, which can boost your speed. You have Synthesis to kind of be a nice little wall if you want to be that. You even have access to Outrage, which in VGC isn't that great, but it's kind of just cool coverage to have on a Grass Dark type. Outside of that, I think this thing is fine. I'm sure Amoonguss will see as much play, if not more play, than Brute Bonnet, just because Amoonguss does that bulky thing a little bit better. But there'll be somebody out there that needs a very physically offensive Amoonguss, and they'll come and pick up this thing. Screamtail, the Paradox Jigglypuff. This thing's very interesting. There's a lot that Screamtail gets, like move-wise, and it can make it a great Pokemon, or it can make it a weird Pokemon. This thing can do the whole screen support thing that like Grimmsnarl is doing, because you have access to screens. I believe you also have access to Imprison, which can turn off opposing screens or opposing whatever you want to turn off. But this also has Trick Room. So a cool set you can do is if you want to play this and are kind of just like worried about Trick Room, you have Imprison Trick Room at your disposal on a very bulky Pokemon. Base 115 HP, base 99 defense, base 115 special defense, and you're still fairly fast at base 111. Not to mention the fact that you get things like Bulk Up and Calm Mind, so you kind of can lean physical or special, because your attack and special attack stat are exactly the same. This thing's not going to go out and knock out a bunch of Pokemon, but you can kind of build a unique set and kind of catch opponents off guard depending on what you want to do with it. Like I said, there's Bulk Up Drain Punch, you have Calm Mind Dazzling Gleam, so the world's your oyster when it comes to Screamtail. I think this will be a fine support Pokemon, but I think Grimmsnarl being Prankster might make it so this thing isn't seen as much. On top of the fact that we do have female Indeedee with Trick Room in the game, I believe that will probably trump this Pokemon as well, because I believe the one thing it doesn't have is Redirection. Yeah, it doesn't have it. And so it'll be interesting to see what wins out in DD or Screamtail when it comes to Trick Room setters. I'm going to say this as nicely as I can. Sandy Shocks does not feel like a very good Pokemon. I'm not sure if it's because it's electric ground type. I'm not sure if it's because it's like stats are kind of fine and its move pool's weird. I'm not sure. So this thing is base 85 HP, base 97 defense, 121 special attack, base 101 speed. This is faster than any like Magnemite, Magnezone you could do with. And it has, I think, better coverage than Magnemite and Magneton and Magnezone with Earth Power, Discharge, Power Gem, Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, and things like that. The one downside is you'd be playing your electric types to beat water types. Sandy Shocks is still weak to water. You still have to worry about the things that you're trying to beat. Iron Bundle puts this thing in a box. Like, you're not outspeeding Iron Bundle. It's going to hit you every time with Freeze Dry and probably take you out because your special defense is 85. So, of all the Paradox Pokemon, I think this one and Slither Wing are probably going to be the least played. But there's a world where this thing gets put on a team, it has a niche, and it does well for a little bit. We're going to skip Flutter Mane and come back to it here in a second. I want to get Slither Wing out of the way. This thing is just not that great. One of the fun things we found out through looking at it, I don't believe there is a way without, there is a good way to get anything but an attack boost with your photosynthesis on this thing. Because as you can see here, I'm going to take your special attack and I'm going to max it out. We'll just pick Modest. Like, Modest you'll get there, but you have to be minus attack. No matter what you do, you have to be minus attack. Otherwise, I believe attack will always trump whatever stat you're trying to boost with photosynthesis. And the one thing this thing wants to do is attack. I looked at this coverage earlier and I was just very surprised for a bug type Pokemon to have this much. You have access to Close Combat, Dual Wing Beat, Earthquake, First Impression, Flare Blitz, Leech Life, Lunge, Trailblaze, Zen Headbutt, Wild Charge, Will-O-Wisp. There's just so much that this thing can do, not to mention acrobatics. Don't count out a booster energy acrobatics from this thing taking out your Pokemon. That is totally a doable thing. But the problem is you're always going to be that booster energy attack without really sacrificing it. So if you wanted to do booster energy speed and actually outspeed stuff, you have to sacrifice attack. And I think that's going to be probably the big nail in the coffin that puts Slither Wing at probably the bottom end of the Violet Paradox Pokemon. Flutter Mane, this thing is scary. So they took Mischievous, gave it bigger hair. It's fine. Its special attack, special defense, and speed are all base 135. And all of its HP, attack, and defense are all base 55. So if you know what Mischievous is, its stats are really, really weird. And Miss Maggie says the same thing, where its HP, attack, and defense are all the same, and its special attack, special defense, and speed are all the same. Well, they made sure that stayed over for Flutter Mane, and so this thing with a booster energy, this thing with Sun Up, is a monster. And you kind of get to set however you want to do it. A lot of what people will be doing is like choice specs with the Sun, or choice Scarf, and using its very powerful Dazzling Gleam, or Energy Ball, or Mystical Fire, or Moon Blast, or Icy Wind, or any of its really deep coverage, really cool coverage that it gets as a Fairy Ghost type, and punish people with it. If Roaring Moon doesn't get the award for most played Paradox Pokemon, it most likely will be Flutter Mane. I think this is probably just like Goldengo 2.0. It'll have different weaknesses, and it'll cause the meta to kind of shift towards a way to almost always have an answer for it. Just like how we kind of did that to Goldengo for a little while. And I think that this is probably the strongest Paradox Pokemon in the game. Great Tusk is very, very cool. If we talked about Iron Treads for a little bit, this is very similar. It's not fast like Iron Treads. It's more bulky. Base 115 HP, base 131 attack and defense, base 53 special attack and special defense, and base 87 speed. This is another good assault vest option, just like Iron Hands, because you have a very high base HP, and whatever investment you put into special defense will get boosted by this assault vest. On top of the fact that you do have access to Protosynthesis, Torkoal plays well with Great Tusk. One of the cool things is you have this new ground type move called Headlong Rush, which is essentially a ground type close combat. So now you have very strong stab ground type moves without having to run Earthquake and hitting your own Torkoal. I think that there is a world where Great Tusk carries like Fire Fang, Headlong Rush, Brick Break, and then maybe Ice Spinner. And you kind of are this very bulky physical attacker. And I think there is a niche for this. I think it will see play, especially like as an opposing like Torkoal answer, because you do have Headlong Rush to kind of just one-shot it if it's in a bad position. You do have to watch out for Flutter Mane, but you do have like access to knockoff if you really want that. But beyond that, I think that this thing is going to see significant play. Not the greatest, but Great Tusk is great, and I'm excited to see people build with it and play with it. The last variant Paradox Pokemon here is Roaring Moon. This is very Hydreigon-esque because it's Dragon Dark type. It hits like a truck, but it's all on the physical side, and notably, this thing is actually really bulky. Not everyone is expecting this base 101 special defense and base 105 HP. You do have that 4 times weakness to Fairy, but obviously this thing will almost always want to Terrastallize when it's on a team. A lot of people, what they were doing early is Terra Flying, Booster Energy, Acrobatics, but you don't have to do that. You could also be like Choice Band Terra Steel, Choice Band Terra Fire, so, since you do have Stab Fire Fang, or you could just play Terra Blast, depending on what you want. Again, this is another Tailwind setter, which is very, very cool. U-turn, it's very, very good, but there's just not enough time in the day to cover how Roaring Moon works, like in a meta, since it does have Hydreigon kind of competing against it on teams because they do share that typing, but they do very different things, since one's a physical attacker that's very fast and wants to hit hard and then kind of goes away, and Hydreigon's kind of filled into this more utility special attacker role. And that's all the Paradox Pokemon in a nutshell. We kind of covered all of them pretty good, I thought. If you have any comments or questions about anything, or you have a cool idea that I didn't talk about, leave it in the comments down below. I'm super excited. I'm going to give as many of these Pokemon as I can an in-depth little 7-minute, 8-minute video talking about potential sets and what their roles on actual teams could be throughout the rest of the month, leading up into Series 2. That's all I got this week. Make sure to do all that fun YouTube stuff for us. Like, comment, subscribe. Leave your comments and questions down below, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.